platform. I'm really excited to talk to you. So it was at the height of the pandemic, and I think that was the time that we were all like thinking about lessons that we had learned in life and trying to figure out what was going on, right?
Oh yeah, it was like peak identity crisis of like, how am I actually giving back to the world? What am I doing with my life? All of that.
What's next? Is the world like falling apart? Like all those things.
All of those things.
And what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And at that time I was in Martha's Vineyard. I had like a good job and everything, and I was like, hey, my father was a tailor back home in Ethiopia. And so one of the things that I was thinking about was a quote that he used to tell me when he looked at other tailors, and he said, always look out for people with greatness in their hands. And so like,
love that.
Yeah, and that, I had forgotten that quote for so long, but now that I had all this time to think because of the pandemic.
Last reflection time.
It came up, and I was like, I was curious. I was like, how are garment workers in New York City doing? You know, here I am just like working from home, like how are they doing? How are people like my dad doing? And so I just like got on Google, put in garment houses in New York City.
Just casual, we love Google for that.
Love Google for that. And it just started calling, and then finally one of them answered, and it was like a company, family-owned company, third generation. His name's Apparel Productions. And I was like, how are you guys doing? And they're like, we're about to close. No one's doing spring, no one's doing fall, no one's doing holiday. Like there's no orders.
Right.
You know?
Oh my god, it was such a scary time.
So scary.
It was almost like everyone was in a stalemate. Like you couldn't make any moves, but you need to make moves. Like what do we do?
How does the industry move? No one knew. And then the thing is, like, you hear about designers not doing collections in 2020, but you don't like step back and think about like the ecosystem that they represent.
Right, absolutely. It has so many touch points. So from workers to even like PR and just like everybody intertwined.
Yeah.
It was a big behind the scenes like
people.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. So when they told me that, I was like, I'm gonna start a brand. My friends will support me, and we'll do all we can to keep your jobs, here.
Absolutely.
And like, so you don't have to close. And so I was just like making that promise, thinking like it was just a passion promise, not knowing what I was getting myself into. And so I had this promise, but then I asked them like, let's make the best hoodie out there.
Yeah.
And so we looked at 17 of the best hoodies from like Dolce & Gabbana to even Gap, and try to see like what cut, what fabric mixture, what made it best hoodie. And then we came up with the G District hoodie in black, which is right here, and it has silk lining all over it, a nice fleece inside. And so once we got the G District hoodie, G District joggers, and Williamsburg Porter hat, which is like the lightest hat in the market.
So cool.
So I wanted to just be very, I think, specific about creating this brand.
Right.
The market was all hoodies and joggers.
Oh my gosh,
That's all you wore, right?
At the time, right. That's like all there was. So it makes sense that you're like, well, what are we doing to set it apart, and being really intentional about it.
Totally intentional. So our hats are made with the last hat maker in Williamsburg. And where I was like, can we make it the lightest hat in the market? And so it's 6 ounces. So to give you like a visual, 6 ounces is 3 strawberries. So like that's how light is our
that is hats. A crazy visual going on in my head.
But you can get it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to like, we did a lot of R&D to just make sure that if I'm gonna promise this to people, and I'm going to be charging a premium price to keep people's jobs, afloat, I had to have a product that I could be proud of, that people are like, not only am I supporting a great cause and a great brand, not knowing that back then it was a brand, but I'm also having a very premium, luxurious product.
Absolutely. And I think putting that added layer, like, to something as simple as a hoodie and loungewear, like you really, which I think this is a great question of, how do you make that differentiation in the market that is so saturated, and like, just a simple e-com photo doesn't necessarily tell that story, so you need the backing to it.
Yeah, definitely. So like, I always say like, no one starts a business wanting to start the best hoodie. You know what I mean? No one's like, I'm gonna start a brand and it's all about the best hoodie at the beginning, you know? And so for us, like, I started the brand saying, okay, I want to support people, but I want to make the best hoodie possible.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like that messaging was like relayed again and again and again.
Yeah, yeah.
And so fast forward, after we got our products, we got our samples, it was time to like contact everyone I had ever met in my life. You know?
I love that. Yes, it's kind of the beauty of New York too, is I feel like people really band together, that when you do have an idea, it's like, hell yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like everyone really wants to see each other succeed.
For sure. And so it's like now November 2020. You know, so we started the journey with them like March 2020. I was like, I'm gonna do what I can, blah blah blah. And then
that was really on.
Yeah, it was like early on. And so like then we're at all summer trying to figure out samples, cutting and all that. And then here we are, November 2020, and it's launch date. And a friend of mine had given me one of her stores that she had closed down because of the pandemic, and she still had the lease. I was like, can I please use it as a pop-up? And she's like, yeah, but people are not gonna come November 2020, you know?
right.
When we don't have a vaccine or anything at that time, you know?
Oh yeah.
It was scary.
Oh, it was scary. It was scary. I was like a crazy person myself, and I was like, all we would do was go walk around and like, I need to go like be inspired, get out, try. Yes.
So I was a little worried when I like emailed everybody and said like, okay guys, we're launching. These are 3 products. Come support us. Love for you know, and we'd love for you to do this. And I also emailed out all these press people. It's like, this is why I'm doing this. Can you support us? You know, and to my complete like surprise, such a pleasant surprise, people came out of the woodworks from people I've never seen in so long, waiting outside, being patient as we like allow people to like float in, you know, because there was like a limit of how many people, you know, so you couldn't like flood, you know, because we were all still scared, and so I was just so pleasantly surprised, and we did such record numbers, you know, when we did that pop-up, and ever since then it's just been people who love the story and the idea, like, you know, I think the idea of like community is what I continue to like harbor on, and that's what people gravitated towards. The quality and the superiority of the products we produce is like an added bonus.
Absolutely. Like having that community as a foundation is so important, and especially now and at that time really put such a value on that. Tell me a little bit about like that relationship of working, you know, with local manufacturers. Like how was it? How did that look like?
I mean, it's definitely difficult, you know, and so when I started, I was like, oh, I want like our bags to be made here, our hang tags to be made here, I just wanted to support
ambitious, but we love it. Yeah.
Totally ambitious. Also like a little bit naive, you know.
Fair.
Because here I am spending so much time to figure out like, oh, who makes like the string on a hang tag here, and like.
Gosh, yeah, it's a knowledge you just like have sitting in the back of your head.
Yeah, so it's like it took me months to try to figure out, oh, that can't be made here, or this can be made here, and all that, and I think like the overall supply chain of what I was trying to do was so complicated. But I was like so determined because it was like a passion project.
Totally.
And I was like, I'm gonna fulfill this passion project, and I don't know when it's gonna end. But
we're doing it. We're in the midst of it.
And I made a promise, and I'm gonna make sure I honor that promise. And so, I think for local manufacturing, and now we've diversified. We've manufactured so many different places.
Yeah.
And because our business has scaled in such a great way and a natural way. I think with local manufacturing, it's just knowing what limitations are there and what limitations are not there. You know, they can produce a hoodie here, perfect. But if when you're looking at like down jackets, you have to be realistic and be like, oh, is there anyone that could produce that here? There might be, but then is the customer there that can spend,
exactly.
an amount that is just unreasonable,
Right. It's tough. I think it kind of, similarly with like the sustainability conversation, like there's so many different ways to take it, and there's a lot to chew that you kind of have to pick and choose. Like this is what we really stand for,
Yep.
this is what we can realistically do, and makes sense for who we're aiming towards.
Yeah. So I think that that's the only thing I would say to people is like when they're thinking about manufacturing locally, like let's be realistic about what can and cannot be.
100%.
And sometimes it might be disappointing what it cannot be.
Oh
here,
yeah,
you know?
totally. Yeah, you want to make the hang tags here, totally.
Yeah,
Why
I know.
not? Why not?
Yeah, for like $10 a hang tag, you know,
So
which
crazy.
is like, you know,
Yeah.
it was very, very hard because especially because I came into it in such a like, you know, like I'm naive to the whole thing, so I'm like, oh, it can be, you know, and then you realize no, it can't be. So, but luckily the products that we were producing and the designs we had could easily be made in New York City, which was like the best.
Amazing.
The best thing.
So you've really, expanded from those core products, and now having seen your spring 2023 line, which will be coming out soon.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, incredible how much you've really dove into like new product categories and new materials.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that like evolution.
Yeah. So I mean, for your listeners that are interested in fashion that don't have a fashion background, like I just want to give them like a very honest, view that I didn't come from a fashion background. I was at the UN. I was supporting in a different way, in a different capacity.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been like a huge learning process to understand the fashion calendar.
Oh my god, that's just a whole crazy beast.
Right?
Yes, it's insane, and it's truly all over the board. That like trying to align it all it's an absolute headache.
The buy calendar. I mean,
And then it's wild. Then I work in forecasting too. So then I'm talking about like spring I'm like onto resort 2024 now.
Insane.
It's just like what are we talking about?
Insane.
It's insane.
It's insane. So I think for me it's just been like a very like what I love about what is happening with the brand is that every day like we are learning constantly new things. And so because I have nowhere to start but like a slate, a blank slate.
Right.
It's a total blank slate. So, it wasn't until, I think after 2020, like into 2021, we were like, oh, we actually have a brand here on our hands, and Saks Fifth Avenue called us and said, I would love to hold your products. And that was, we launched with them exclusively September 2021. And that's when we were like, I think we have something here. It's 100%. Not just like a passion project that, just felt good and we just forget about it afterwards. It's a fully fledged brand that is supporting a lot of people. The ecosystem, we talked about that earlier, right? So like not just the garmenters, but like associates that work at Saks,
Oh yeah.
And just like the overall, every touch point, the photographer, the models, the this, the that. And so we had to step back and be like, where do we take this from now?
Yeah.
What's going on? Because, no one does a passion project and just goes into a retailer and just be like, that's not it.
No, 100%.
You have to have a strategy.
Yeah.
And so for us, like, that's when we were like, let's be strategic about what is our next step. And so for us, the natural progression was we would, so we had a heavier hoodie that we launched in 2021. Then the natural progression is lighter one, so that we'll have that as a complete set.
Right.
But then when we continued our collection, it was about having a whole wardrobe. We created this ethos and something that guides us as a brand is called Livewear. And so Livewear is creating things that you can't live without.
I love that. Yes. Yeah. And I do feel like there's such a tone of minimalism that's been going on post-COVID that you're really like, I want those hero products in an edited wardrobe. For ease, yes. For ethics, so many different reasons. But I love the Livewear. Like, hell yeah. Like, I want to throw on my favorite hoodie or my favorite pair of pants.
That's exactly it. So like when we put it in a sentence, Livewear is such that when you're not wearing that piece, it's what you're thinking about. And when you are wearing those pieces, you don't want to part from them.
Yeah.
And so like that's how we describe it. And so using that, we created a whole ready-to-wear wardrobe, after the hoodies to make sure that people understand that we want us to be their number one go-to for that every day, every night, wearable items that they need.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And I feel like it's aligning really well with how, the way that we're getting dressed right now, and that we're slowly easing back into everyday life. I've got going back to the office or social occasions, but it's all been step by step.
Step by step.
Yeah.
It's totally step by step. So, and it was so tempting after the first hoodies that we did 3 colors to just go all in, and be like, but it was like a step back so that we can move forward, and I think that like in fashion, like especially when you're a startup, you have to figure out like that step back before you can move forward.
Oh